Carlo Nutini going heavy with Iron Sky.
Oh, rain on me.
Freedom.
Rain on me.
Freedom. That is the subject of tonight. We're talking freedom. But first, before freedom, there needs to be something to free ourselves from. Ladies and gentlemen, that thing is slavery. Welcome to tonight's broadcast. We're going to be talking about all the sensitive issues that you're not allowed to talk about, especially if you look like me. But we're going to do it anyway, right? We're going to do it anyway, but we're going to do it in a sensitive, compassionate, spiritual way. You know, I put a little something in the book. Which book is that? It's this book right here. This book right here. But it's not a shameless plug. This is just the book I wish I always had. It's the book I wish I was given at the start of my spiritual journey. And I distilled some stuff that I picked up along the way that I thought, hey, I like the sound of that. I think that's got a little something in it. This little passage right here. Okay, granted, Emily Bronte wrote this, but this is the way I see the world. In this passage, we see it's Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, and it beautifully illustrates this inner conflict between worldly limitations and spiritual freedom. Jane's assertion of her spiritual dignity captures the essence of spiritual rebirth. Do you think I am an automaton, a machine without feelings? And can you bear to have my morsel of bread snatched from my lips and my drop of living water dashed from my cup? Do you think because I am poor, obscure, plain and little, I am soulless and heartless? You think wrong. I have as much soul as you and full as much heart. And if God had gifted me with some beauty and much wealth, I would have made it as hard for you to leave me as it is now for me to leave you. I am not talking to you now through the medium of custom, conventionalities, not even of mortal flesh. It is my spirit that addresses your spirit, just as if both had passed through the grave and we stood at God's feet. Equal as we are. I am a free human being with an independent will, which I now exert to leave you. Now there is a passage that everyone who's ever experienced slavery will say with their full chest. And it is something that we, as a spiritual people, need to announce over the liturgy of the flesh, over that which we have been bastardized into believing, that heresy, that damnable tradition known as futurism. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we're going all the way in now. Let me tell you something, brother. Okay, futurism's going down. Listen, usually it's a lot more congenital. Congenital? It's usually a lot more congenital than it. It's a congenital proclivity towards freedom. But usually it's a little bit more congenial. Usually I'm a gentleman, and a scholar. But ladies and gentlemen, when you're experiencing slavery, man, sometimes you gotta get a little ruckus, right? Is that a thing? Isn't that like a thing that refers to my subconscious? Isn't there like an Uncle Ruckus who's a terrible character to invoke right now? Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard the dulcet tones of Howlin' Wolf? Have you heard the smooth suave of Slim Harpo? Oh, he's a king bee. And have you heard the electrifying sounds of Hound Dog Taylor? We're talking field songs, spiritual songs, Delta blues, swamp and hill country blues. And I want you to remember that swamp, because we're going to be talking about that swamp and how sitting here today is the original Swamp Man. That's right. Not Shrek. Not Shrek. Donkey. I'm not doing that. That's not what I meant. However, we are the original swamp people. The Roman army, the Roman Empire, taking over the world, essentially, comes to the Europes, right? Comes up, it was already in Europe, comes up to the Northwest, comes up to Scotland. And it draws a line in the sand, and it's, you know, it looks at the people of Britain, it looks at the Gaels, the Celtics, it looks at the Picts, and it says, nah, we don't want any of that. And, you know, pretty uncool, man. We'll see some of the things they said. There's the national animal of Scotland. That right there is a unicorn. That's what we decided would be our national animal. Why? Well, why not? Why not? I've got some other alternatives here. I thought this should be the national animal of Scotland. As you can see, it's got a red face, or a face like a scalped arse, as we would say here. Right? That's what we look like in the summer. It's got that rich red hair, which is most prevalent here in Scotland. And it's got a wee dour face. That is the facial expression of someone who has lived through 50 icy, dark winters. It's not actually that icy in Scotland. You get lots more ice in America. However, that is a Scottish person, if ever I've seen one. There's an old story that a French cargo ship once washed up in England and a monkey came off, and the people of Britain thought that was what a Frenchman was. But that right there is clearly a Scotsman. Now, I understand how precarious it is. Some of you are going to be thinking, boy, there's a lot of racial slurs around about these animals. Why are you bringing these animals up? I saw this animal today, and that is exactly what I thought. And you know what? It's all connected. Trust me to navigate us through these waters. Now, granted, I have reached out to William Bell today and asked him to jump onto the channel. So if this is his first experience of Willie T, you gotta trust me. You gotta trust me, right? Just trust me to navigate these muddy waters, right? You gotta trust me. All right. Let's get into it. So the first thing first, right? I wanna riff with you a little bit. Okay, I want to read a little something to you. I wrote a couple of little short articles today because slavery was on my mind. And I'll tell you why. I'll show you why. There's a petition. The Caribbean nations would like a few trillion pounds from the British. And, you know, there it is there. MPs to discuss slavery reparations. A group of activists and academics will travel to Westminster to make their case, which could include demands for trillions of pounds. Well, I mean, things are pretty bad in the UK. The one thing we can't afford to do is use taxpayer money to whatever the word is, to pay reparations. And I don't think it's a wise thing either, right? This advert's not going to go away, is it? Anyways, I'll jump back. So I say we live in a strange moral paradox, right? The very reason slavery offends modern sensibilities is because of British influence. Now, I won't say it's the reason, but it's like 80% of the reason why we don't do it anymore, right? People saying, hey, we don't like this. That, slavery's been around forever. It's the original trade. So, the British being one of the most influential empires at the time, yeah, the abolitionist legacy had a lot to say about that. And without it, slavery might still be seen as an unfortunate but accepted norm like it was for millennia. The British sacrificed so much to end the practice. So the strange thing, the sad thing is that 1 in 200 people today are slaves. So slavery is much bigger, much like colossally bigger today. But you don't feel that, right? You don't feel that that's true. And the only reason that you don't feel that that's true is because of the abolitionist movement that started here in the United Kingdom, right? Because before that, it just wasn't a thing to see it as like, it's an unfortunate thing, but this is just the way it is. The idea that we would stop this trade baffled the minds of people. It baffled them. They didn't get it. They wanted to go to war to keep it going. So, yeah, while we can say the UK was not perfect, the moral revolution that ignited from this helped to reshape the world. Unfortunately, only within certain parts of the world, because slavery is a huge thing today. 1 in 200 people. Crazy numbers. Now, the British Empire, Britain only finished paying off the debt that it incurred to end slavery in 2015. Right? 10 years ago, that's when we finished paying it off, because we had to pay people to stop trading slaves. So we bankrupted ourselves. We bankrupted the British Empire to stop slavery. I mean, can you fathom that kind of miraculous decision making in such a debauched, cynical world? Why would an empire do that to itself, right? Again, we paid it off 10 years ago. And that just kind of shows you part of it, because we went to war. We lost lives over this too. Britain killed itself, basically, ended its global dominance to end this trade. And no one else had ever done that before. Never. It had never been done. And we see that as this small thing, We see it as this small thing. I wrote something about that kind of attitude in the book, actually, about the night sky. Like, you forget the stars in the night sky, because, the night sky is so dark that when you see a couple of blots of light, you just think, meh, it's dark. Instead of saying, oh wait, no, look, there's something here. There's something out there. Credits where credit's due. Doesn't seem like the world's working that way. So it makes you ask the question, what nation would self-destruct over a morally good cause? Because it wasn't entirely clear that this was a morally good cause. You could have scriptural justification for slavery. What's morally good about ending a trade that enriches certain people and gives people a helpful workforce at a really good price? You could argue, isn't that evil to take that out of society, right? So where is that coming from? Well, it's coming from Christianity, isn't it? It's coming from something we'll touch on very soon. So, the UK, at least here, we tend to scold ourselves as being the moral villains in history. And it raises the question, is it even worth trying to be the good guys? Why lean right? Why not just lean into the villainy then? If for any good that you do, it's just not seen, it's not credited to you, right? And people just keep picking away. It makes you think, but ultimately it comes down to the fact that moral leadership doesn't come with thanks. You don't do it for the thanks. You do it because it matters, right? You're not serving man, you're serving God. So when you end freedom and then centuries later, people are saying, no, give us more money. It's like, I don't know, man. There's a big part of me that just wants to say fuck off at that point. I'm sorry if that language offends you. But, people will say, well, isn't it true that, certain nations still suffer the legacy of colonialism? And the answer to that question, according to, hold on, it's this video over here.
She makes me smile.
Sorry, that's a song coming on. I don't know why. Magati Wade. Yeah, so let's consult Magati Wade, right? She's over here in this video. Just for a second.
Is Africa poor because of colonialism?
A resounding no. The solution to poverty is prosperity. Then who and how do we build prosperity? It's entrepreneurs, right? They always have two companies, one in Africa and one in the US. And to see that one almost took 2 years, the other one barely 20 minutes to put together.
Why is it so overregulated, though?
Because once upon a time, we drank the fateful, ill-advised, dreadful, deadly ideology of socialism.
Shoot.
Oh my God, great to have you on the
So-
show.
Thanks for having me.
She's getting a bit political there, but, big dunk on socialism there. But what she's saying is true. Like, there's immense corruption and then poor economic strategies that are being tested basically in these terrible experiments in Africa. It does no one any good. There's no one any good. I think the richest African nation per capita might be Seychelles, based on its tourism. I think it does quite well, actually. But the distribution, how that money's used for infrastructure and stuff, like, it needs to be mapped out. They over-regulate, from what I've heard from her discussion here, is they over-regulate the people, and then the elites just enjoy for themselves the luxuries that they can afford themselves, which really happens everywhere. And we're going to jump back into church history, and we're going to have a little look over here. Boom. So we're going to talk Augustine of Hippopotamus, right? Augustine of Hippo, and he lived from 350 to 430 AD, right? And then it was during the years of 405 to 417 in Algeria / Tunisia, one of those two regions in North Africa, that he was embroiled in a very caustic debate. As a Catholic, he was debating the Donatists. He used to have a school friend person called Donati, and it was these Donatists that he was contending with, right? And the Donatists were a schism, depending on how you want to pronounce that, right? They were the schisms. I'll give you a little insight into what that was all about. And this was a much better visual, though. So, Augustine said in letter 93 to Vincentius, a Donatinist bishop, "It is indeed better that man should be led to worship by teaching." So it's better that man should be led to worship God by teaching than that they should be driven to it by fear of punishment or pain. But because the former means is better, the latter must not therefore be neglected. And he said in letter 39 again, "Why should the church use force in compelling her lost sons to return, if the lost sons compelled others to their..." Why should not the church use force in compelling her lost sons to return, if the lost sons compelled others to their destruction? So here he is justifying the use of force. So Augustine argued that the state, as God's servant, could use violence to help the church suppress heresy and bring people to the truth. So he has these rather direct endorsements of just intense means of coercion, which is a shame because Tertullian strongly opposed the use of force in matters of faith, but Augustine shifted the theological ground. He opened a door for centuries of church-state violence, crusades, inquisitions, and forced conversions. He believed coercion could be loving if it brought someone to eternal truth. And this is a deeply consequential moral claim that shaped Christian imperial policy. So the Donatists themselves were a Christian sect that emerged in North Africa in the 4th century, named after Donatus Magnus. They rejected the legitimacy of bishops and clergy who had betrayed the faith during the Roman persecutions, those who handed over scriptures. Yeah, I mean, that seems fair play. If the bishops betrayed the faith, then I understand why Donatus would be like, well, what kind of leadership is that? The Donatists believed the purity of the church depended on the moral purity of its leaders. Well, I don't know so much. Like, you can get redemption, right? So you want to carefully measure that and see if you can trust them. And that sacraments administered by unworthy clergy were invalid. Well, that's certainly true, right? You can't have, a rapscallion up there. They saw themselves as the true church, opposing what they saw as corrupt and compromised imperial Christianity. The Catholic Church, supported by the Roman state, viewed the Donatists as schismatics, not heretics, although that distinction faded over time. Donatists, or Donatism, became both a religious and political resistance movement, particularly after Constantine's conversion and the merging of church and empire. Now, to be fair, the Donatists did use violence themselves. They're a bit like the original Protestants with the tactics of the IRA. They did some things. They had a radical wing of zealots. They were anti-imperial, anti-landlord, and anti-Catholic. And they would attack property, they would attack clergy, and they sometimes sought martyrdom by provoking Roman authorities. They would abuse Catholic clergy, destroy church property, and, not great stuff, to be honest. Let's be clear. So that sort of contextualizes Augustine's use of violence in some ways, but it doesn't really fully excuse it. So Augustine saw Donatist violence and sectarian instability as a threat to both souls and civic peace. He initially opposed coercion, but changed his mind when peaceful persuasion failed, and the Donatists, especially circumcilians, continued violent disruptions. He argued that temporary coercion could save eternal souls, a moral trade-off. But that doesn't justify it outright. The majority of Donatists were non-violent. It was the radical factions who were militant. Augustine's endorsement of state-backed compulsion and punishment for theological error laid the groundwork for centuries of religious persecution, even when no violence or rebellion was present. And there it is, folks, when you make a policy or pass a law, you need to be so careful. You need to be so careful about the implications of that and how it can be misused, and the way language can shape the trajectory and destiny of a nation. And going back to that language, I told you to keep in mind the swamp people, right? The swamp and hill country blues. And I said that the Scots were the original swamp people. Well, this is what the Roman Empire had to say about the Scots. We were considered unconquerable. Now, if you say someone's unconquerable, you might think that that's amazing. You might think, oh, that's such a cool thing to be, is unconquerable. I want to be unconquerable, right? Nah, that's not what that meant. Unconquerable to the Romans meant you were subhuman, okay? It meant that you could not be civilized, right? when they couldn't conquer you, right, it meant that it was proof that you were beneath civilizing. So it said here, they are not worth the Roman yoke. Better to let beasts roam wild than bleed civilized men for their sake. Okay, so yikes, right? Absolute likes. Cassius Dio said they live in perpetual swamp, submerged like frogs. They plunge into the swamps and exist there for many days, and only their heads above water, subsisting on bark and roots. Ignore both fish and agriculture. They live naked and unwashed. Okay? So those were not just insults. They painted a subhuman picture where the Scots and the British people would be seen as amphibious, right? There's these amphibious bogland swamp creatures. Dio had said that they wear iron on their waists and throats. Considering iron a symbol of wealth, they value this metal as other barbarians value gold. So that's said to devalue our culture, right? That we use these rudimentary elements instead of prizing the precious gold. So that makes us seem like a bunch of ignoramuses. Tacitus says, they're fierce, but not brave. They're unstable, and they're untrustworthy in war. And then we have the idea of us being painted demons. They paint themselves with woad, giving them a demonic-looking battle. And then they surface like frogs to raid camps and then vanish into the mist and mire. So this is this language, right? This is this language that's used to justify supremacy. And everyone feels that. Don't think you can ascribe primacy. There's a very particular critique, right? It's critical race theory, and it seeks to ascribe all of this energy to white people in particular. Now, you need to bear in mind, like, history didn't start with the Roman Empire, right? Like, before the Roman Empire, you had the Babylonian Empire, you had the Egyptians, you had the Ottoman Empire, you know, you had the Ethiopians and their wealth and excess. And, you know, we need to be careful with, you know, our understanding of humanity and the different proclivities that people have. And like I said, there's more difference. Oh, what is it? There's more similarities between groups than within groups, right? So I could find a bunch of people with mass sensibilities in different races, whereas within my race, I hate using that terminology, by the way, but within the tribe of the Scots, I could find very many people who disagree with me. In fact, that is my existence, right? I'm a minority as a outspoken theist, and especially as a full preterist, right? And we need to start living up there. Remember the quote I read out from is it Charlotte Bronte? Jane Eyre, right? Remember that quote about addressing someone else as a spirit, as if before God? We need to step outside of these bodies when they get that little activation into supremacy, right? Because it's codified into us in some ways to want to establish that which is most beneficial to what we see as ours and, you know, our own, right? You know, that was a kinfolk, right? You kinfolk. And you need to be so much more porous with those borders. I mean, put up barriers where they're necessary. Don't let evil in, right? But don't call a people group evil. Right, these are simple lessons. These are Christian lessons. These are spiritual lessons. But indeed, we can see where the Christians went wrong in the persecution of Gnostics, where they just flattened all the nuance out of Gnosticism, put them all together, and made them sound ridiculous. That's the legacy of our man Irenaeus. And then you've got Augustine here, you know, talking some BS, right? So we need to be mindful of that. And again, it's the shrugged shoulders, right? All these things happen through just the shrugging of 1,000 shoulders, right? And we get ourselves into this BS situation. Let me break your hearts a little bit now. Let me break your hearts now that I've kind of waded into the swamplands. Okay, we're going to jump over here now. I'm just going to close this guy off. So Augustine, Donatism. So listen to this, and I'm going to read you a little passage that I wrote today. A woman said she was told that is what white girls were for when she was a victim of grooming gangs as a teenager in Rotherham, England, a jury heard today. She was about 14 years old when she was allegedly raped by Sagir Hussain, who was a similar age, and two other men. At the opening of the trial at Sheffield Crown Court, the prosecutors said that the little girl, who's now in her late 30s, was abused by Hussain, Kasur and Adjab and Mohammed Makemod between 1999 and 2002. The prosecutor told the jury that Hussain continued to call her things like white slag when he saw her. Andrew Bailey opened the trial of the three men by telling the jury the three defendants are all charged with serious sexual offending of a historical nature. Now, the thing to notice here is the supremacy at work, right? So what's been going on in England is still going on in England, and it was a huge cover-up. This is going to be the story of the year. You're going to be sitting in your most rural American town and you're going to hear it on your news. Oh, the UK is falling apart because of this huge scandal where tens of thousands of white girls were raped and nobody said anything because they were afraid of being called racist. That's not my opinion. That is the written record of research done in both the Casey inquiry and the Jay report. So watch out for the national inquiry, which is has the legal authority to call people forward. This was covered up by police. This was covered up by councillors. They were in on it. They were trading little girls. And it was run by gangs, mafiosos from Pakistan. And there was a strong feature of ethnic resentment at the bottom of it, right? So bear in mind what's been said here, okay? Bear in mind what's been said here, right? We're talking about slavery. That's what white girls are for. Now, historically, in the United States, if you saw an African man working in a cotton field, you might ask, is this kind of labour morally right? And the plantation owner will reply, that's what they're for. But that belief did not arise in a vacuum, okay? As many scholars have explained, these weren't just personal prejudices. They were part of a vast social construction. Entire institutions reinforced the idea. African kings sold captives to traders. American ships transported them. The plantation owners put them to work. It was a supply chain built on a lie. You remember the Charlotte Bronte quote from earlier? Here's the lie. That dignity wasn't inherent. It was conditional. Something to be earned, or worse, granted by divine decree. And Africans in the American South were said not to have it. So when they stood up and asserted their humanity, just like the Emily Bronte quote, and they said, I am a man, I too am American. Many white Americans of the South, schooled in the mythology of divine favour and racial hierarchy, well, they weren't having that. They would recoil in shock. It's a heresy. It's a heresy. Public services, the law, and local politics turned their faces away from these African men. Where has that happened in history? It's happening today in England with little white girls. What do you think the spirits of these African men would think when they see these words coming from this man? That's what little white girls are for. Oh, well, that's what black men are for. That's what African men are for. That's what little white girls are for. You don't think those two spirits are of one? And they feel the oppression. They feel the rape of their future. The rape. Just fuck. What a moral blight. And that's what they're calling it, because they're trying to sanitize it and call it a grooming gang. Nah, it's worse than that. And I would argue slavery is equally just, you know what I mean? It's not good. It's not the proper way to see people. Sorry, I get emotional because this inquiry is going to blow up. You're going to hear all about this, man. It's the fact we turned a blind eye, just like these services did in America, right? Just like the police would. Just, you know what I mean? What was it Dr. Cornel West would say? You know, the strange fruit that hung from trees in the American South. You know, I don't want to. I don't know the full history. I don't want to walk blind into that, but just quoting Cornel West, you know. Yeah, man. They turned their faces away. And yet the African would persist, right? You see that I'm an African. And you see your so-called divine favour, but you are blind to the spirit you're of. And blind to the spirit in me. You do not see my humanity. You do not see that I too am American. You have to acknowledge that or admit you're morally bankrupt. Now, this is one of the most profound moments in history, right? A long and bitter struggle full of heartbreak and resistance, setbacks and moral victories. And you could argue black Americans only secured full legal rights quite recently, actually, after 1965. And even then, social acceptance wasn't some binary, it's not there, now it's there, right? There's that Alabama state football. Like, was it only in the mid-1970s that Alabama allowed black athletes to compete in their team? I think there's a comedy bit that Shane Gillis does on that, you know what I mean? It's like, that's what America needs to. So, like, if you could get some transgender people in a American football team, the American public would be so accepting of them. It's, you know what I mean? He does a good bit about that. But this is a very tragic thing I'm talking about, so let's not riff on comedy bits. But yeah, okay, Alabama steps up. The 1980s and 1990s brought visible progress, yet systematic inequality still felt today. Some say things are as good as they're going to get. Others say the wounds never properly healed, right? But now, disturbingly, in microcosms across the UK, we have the emergence of a new kind of morally compromised economy. These modern plantation owners don't harvest cotton, they target the vulnerable, okay? And you still hear the echo of that old justification. That's what they're for, right? Over here. That's what was said. That's what little white girls are for, right? That's what they're for. Now, we have to be clear. Just as we don't blame all Americans for the sins of slavery, we do not and must not blame all Pakistanis for the crimes of these grooming gangs. But what these inquiries show time and again is that moral decay is rarely born of a single evil act. It is the fruit of 1,000 shrugged shoulders. It is 1,000 moments of institutional cowardice. It's 1,000 fears of being called the wrong thing, of stirring offence, or losing your place. And that's the same fear that keeps futurism alive, right? The real fears. I'm not saying for people to sabotage their relationships instantaneously. I don't know how high the stakes are, but it doesn't feel as morally condemning as, grooming gangs and slavery, right? But it's the same fear. The thing is, when you do this, when you do these things, when you make the mistake last for decades, right? When you make a mistake like this last for decades, it does crazy amounts of harm to the social fabric. It's crazy amounts of harm. It's like necrotic flesh, and the rot goes so deep, and you have to cut so deep into the flesh, right? You have to cut so deep that you're left with a limp. Yeah, it's like, are you ever going to walk right again? By the time society is finally willing to acknowledge it, the remedies often have to be so decisive, uncomfortable, and disruptive to the status quo. Like treating necrosis, healing can require deep intervention. These moments challenge society. They provoke defensiveness, they provoke outrage, even denial. But what's truly dangerous is pretending the decay isn't there. Because moral integrity, like physical health, sometimes demands principled and lawful action, always aimed at restoration, not retribution. And we need to remember that, right? After World War II, my grandfather, I can't even tell you the name because it's a euphemism now. Is it funny? It's not funny. In the context of this video with a Christian audience, it's not funny. My grandfather was part of an operation that, if I said now, there's certain people listening to this who won't take it very maturely, but it's a certain colour of a certain animal, and when you say it, it sounds like a euphemism. So he was part of Operation, right? And he went in there to North Germany and took, is it Heinsberg? It's a little town, or a town called Heinsberg. Captured it with his the Royal Scots Guard. And after the war, he twinned his hometown in West Calder with Heinsberg. Twinned them. And then he started sending musicians over and orchestras over and music to try and bring the people together. Now, we didn't just empty our nuclear arsenals on the Germans once we beat them. Right? There's the homeland of Nazism. Let's wipe them off the face of the map, right? That'll be good. Nah, that wouldn't be good. What's that? What spirit are you of? Let's call down fire from heaven and destroy them. You know not what spirit you are of. Right? So there has to be a space for redemption. We have to allow healing. We have to. There's no alternative to this thing. We're stuck here in these bodies playing these parts. Step outside it. You got to try and step outside it. If you have ethnic resentments, if you have hate in your heart, you know who one of my personal heroes are? So it's an African, or is it African American? You tell me. I don't speak to enough Black Americans, right? As a black, I think it's Black American I hear more now. And we got so caught up in that stuff, right? Because it's not even black people that are going to hold us, at gunpoint. It's other white people who get like, hey, you're not being PC enough. Depends what country you're from, right? Like in South Africa, they still use terms like coloureds, right? And it doesn't, like, coloureds refers to like a whole group of people, and we would, shit our pants with that kind of language up here. But we're not trying to be offensive. We're just trying to describe reality. So, yeah, gosh, now I forget my point. I got all flustered there. But this is the thing about the Scots, like the Scottish people, the original muddy waters, the original sort of looked down upon people. We've been around for 1,100 years as Scotland, right? 1,100 years. And we're some of the most depressed people on the planet. On the planet. If you measure depression, we have it. Well, we got it in spades. You should come over to Scotland and sample our depression. Alcohol and drug-related deaths, number one. Number one in the world, right? Nah, it can't be in the world. It might be in the world. Like, if you put the drug-related deaths in there, I think we're number one. And you might think to yourself, well, that must be really, really bad up there in Scotland. What's going on? And the answers are, I could give you some answers. But the fact that it is, you might think it's Slovak, you might think it's like Albanians, you might think it's Estonians that are living rough and alcoholics. It's not, it's us, it's the Scots. I was so ashamed of that because we've come a long way. You know, the life expectancy in some parts of Glasgow used to be less than Burkina Faso. Like the life expectancy in Govan used to be 50 or something like that. It was crazy numbers. And Glasgow used to be the murder capital of Europe. But we've come around, right? I'm not selling this. Like, Scotland's a beautiful country. Gorgeous country. Visit Scotland. No, it genuinely is a gorgeous, gorgeous country. And obviously, there's some social problems in some deprived areas. But it's a great... Bring the kids. Bring the kids to the rape capital of Europe. We've got all these terrible things out, guys. You know how when you go on safari, you see a tiger and lions on the Serengeti and stuff like that? Visit Scotland. We'll keep you in like one of those jeeps that they use for Jurassic Park. Welcome to Scotland Park. You just a bunch of fucking junkies running around with like glass bottles ready to stab you. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. Come. Listen, if I've put you off, if I've made you... What made you fear? Nah, it's genuinely not that bad, right? But it is bad. It's pretty bad. It's not as good as it could be. In terms of what I would want it to be, I painted a bad picture. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not bad. They're listening. They're listening. It's fine. 1,100 years this people group have existed that I have been incarnated into, right? And I firmly, when I say that, I mean that. I don't feel Scottish. I feel like I'm a spirit indwelling a Scottish identity, a Scottish body. Like, this doesn't mean much to me. This is why I don't understand supremacy based on race, let's say, right? I don't get that. You know what I mean? I've met other people, other Scottish people. I don't like all of them. I mean, I don't hate anybody. I love everyone, right? But they're not all likable characters, you know what I mean? Like, just in everybody exists on a spectrum. There's going to be really sweet, lovely people, and then there's going to be arseholes who want to use you and steal from you and be cruel. And it's like, why would I want that? Why would I want that to be supreme? Isn't there something deeper? Remember we talked about existential cul-de-sacs? Well, there's something to that. Now, there is something to be said about culture. I believe in cultural supremacy. What do I mean by that? Let me explain. The cultural supremacy I would like to see championed is the culture of the kingdom of heaven. Saved it. I told you could trust me with this topic at the start of the hour. At the top of the hour, I told you could trust me to navigate these waters. You questioned me. You heard my accent. You saw the complexion of my skin and you said, we don't trust you, Willie T. We don't trust you to navigate this with the elegance and grace and sophistication that it requires, or the lived experience. But so far, so good. So far, so good. I firmly believe we're mending fences right now. So let me get personal. Let me get real personal with you right now. Right? Let me get real personal with you. I would love to go to Louisiana and just speak the, what do they call it? What do you call that? Cajun? That would just be so much fun. That Louisiana Cajun. I got a message right before. Let me just see what's happening in the chat. Now I'm nervous. Now I'm nervous. Hashtag cancelled. Hashtag cancelled. Now we're good. We're good. Nobody's calling me any names. Which book? Oh, you know that book. Shake Stars from the Sky. Good to see you, Lady Cymbeline. Always there. Joe Fisher, welcome back. Take your seat. Someone posted a clip on X from that Liam Neeson movie you were referencing on the Silence one. Love the wrestling references you make, brother. I love a bit of wrestling. Mia Wachowska really delivers that passage with such power. Oh yeah, I love that. I love that. Mia's easier to say than the Wachowska part. God bless you, brother. I hope you're doing well. Thank you, Sean. That means a lot. Grady, good to see you, Grady. Te extraño, Grady. Te extraño. You know what I'm saying? Beso, beso. Apachachos. I don't know if these mean anything. I don't know what it means, Grady. Willie wants to break our hearts. I know. That's just what I'm talking about. He says the only thing that needed for evil to succeed is for good men to fail to heed the call of good and the call of right because they fear they'll lose the fight. Man, I could have said that better, but you wrote it good. Visit Scotland, see Nessie. I did. Cajun, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The Cajun Nessie. Imagine cooking them up Cajun. That'd be pretty sweet. I would enjoy that. So, if I might, something disturbing happened. I got a message from, I won't go into any personal stuff, like I'm not going to disclose names, but I got a message from an ex-partner, my ex-partner, and then it was deleted, right? And I thought to myself, well, what do you do with that? How do you gracefully, was she trying to say something, but there's something on her mind? And I have these things, like her literal things are still here. And I was thinking, I won't throw them away. I need to keep them or store them somewhere. And she needs to pick them up at some point. This is crazy. You know, it's been like several months, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't know how many. Like, it's been a while, right? And she just communicated to me that she doesn't care about anything anymore. And that she is very depressed, like very Scottish. What I will say is very Scottish. She's an immigrant into this country and she has just caught the flavour of Scotland, just that peak depression. And yeah, so that's concerned, right? When people talk to you like that, because you know how fragile life can be when someone's on the ropes, and you hope they're maybe being a little melodramatic, but you don't know. And she's like, just throw everything away, sell everything, use that to cover an outstanding bill, whatever. Because I don't know, I said I wasn't going to get into the minutiae of it, but she kind of owed me a little bit of money. And she's like, just sell all this stuff then and you can get your money. And then I thought to myself, no, I don't like that. You know what I mean? Like, that was more out of principle. It was more out of principle that someone, the way the breakup happened, I felt like, and then I was kind of due. I need my money, man. It's hard. I was just out of principle, but I just said, look, forget it. Don't, because once I got this depressed tone, you could say you're being manipulated. I don't think I'm being manipulated at all. I just, she said something about her stuff. When she said just throw it away or sell it, I said, I can't do that. I can't throw away your stuff and sell. Like, some of it's like wee sentimental items. And then she said something. She said, everything holds sentimental value. But in a sort of reductive way. Like, oh, everything holds sentimental value. Just throw it away. And I thought to myself, nah, I refuse to do that. I'm not going to let that depression frame my choices or frame how I conduct myself. It's the same for any kind of national moral pile that falls over this country with these grooming gang scandals and with the depression and the addiction and the drug deaths and stuff. Like, I'm not going to let that frame my existence. There is a beautiful, beautiful gem of a country just waiting to just fizz up and sploosh. What the hell am I talking about? You know what I'm saying? So I just kind of said, look, that's not what's going to happen. Let me recommend some things, but not like a man, because I know that men right, try and fix problems, and women don't like that. So I was very sensitive and stuff. Anyways, I think it went okay. I think that interaction today went okay. I'm going to leave it now and retreat back away from it. But yeah, this is one of the little things. This is one of the little things here that was hers, right? Little action. And that's what it calls for. That's what the moment calls for, guys. When it comes to these thoughts of supremacy and things, and they're subtle. They're very subtle, right? Because even as a man interacting with a woman, remember I talked about the control over the flesh? Because there's neurochemical things that happen where it's like, oh, this is a female of the species who I could get working on my plantation knowledge. You know what I mean? That kind of comes over you sometimes. No, what I'm saying is, as a man, you can't. I'm not saying this happened to me today. What I'm saying is, as a man, you can be like that sometimes and not give people the due dignity with which, you know, the what's her face? Charlotte Bronte. The Charlotte Bronte quote. Okay. So, bring it down. I want to try and be a spirit ministering to another spirit who is having an experience incarnated into this form. And I want to minister to it as a divine presence rather than a biological entity. And you have to not war, but it's not a war, man. I don't like that language. You have to finesse your neurochemical, hormonal reactions so that you're distilling something pure and beautiful. Just, could this help you? Not could this help you and could you do something for me in return? Oh, wink, wink. You know what I mean? Not that I would ever do that, but there can be a subtext to these things. I think women in particular feel very afraid that men will take advantage of them. 57% of women feel unsafe walking the streets of London at night, according to an ITV research. ITV is a news channel here in the United Kingdom. I think it was 53% of women feel unsafe in the streets of London at night. Does that surprise you? Should we be surprised that women are feeling increasingly unsafe? And what's happening to produce that? Well, I talked a bit about masculinity and how we have defanged the host masculinity of the United Kingdom, but we're bringing in people who still have exceedingly sharp fangs in terms of their masculinity. And there's an integration issue there. That's not my opinion. This is backed up by a lot of research, people coming into Europe. And we need to do a better job. It's an indictment against us that we are not doing this better. We have to be compassionate and sympathetic, but we also have to think of the social issues and integration issues that can come about. These are the pressing issues as we move into an election cycle here in the United Kingdom. And I'm pretty sure it's a big deal in the USA as well. So you understand exactly what I'm talking about. And again, as we do this, we need to remember we're not being led by the themes of supremacy insofar as they are just wired towards existential cul-de-sacs and shrugged shoulders. Instead, what we're trying to do is inform the culture and affect the trajectory of the culture so that we don't end up like Augustine, right? Who brought about this viciousness and when he combined religion and empire together. And we need to be so careful against that because we're kind of doing it in the UK now. I can't articulate that point much further because it's illegal in Scotland to say things that could be seen as offensive. So I don't think I've been offensive at all tonight. But there are particular religions in this country that seem to be exerting undue influence and seem to be above criticism because it's equated to racism and stuff. And I just don't think that's fair, honest, or conducive to the health of the society. See that line there? I got that from a Jason Statham film. I think it was The Transporter 2 when he gets and he sticks a needle into someone, he says, "Now I know it's not conducive to my good health," or something like that. So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff going on in this video. So I just want to see if I've got another. I've got another headline here for you. Yeah, we talked about unicorns. Yeah, I suppose the last thing we could touch on before is this part here. So I saw this in a video referenced earlier. It's the tripartite soul, and it's Plato's theory of the soul, right? I think the soul for Plato is this whole inclusive thing. So you've got the rational aspect, the logical, which seeks truth and is swayed by facts and arguments. You've got the spirited emotional part, how your feelings fuel your actions. And then you've got appetites, physical desires, drives where you eat, have sex, and protect yourselves, right? So I know that in the dharmic kind of systems, they have different foods, don't they? The sattvic, the rajasic, and there's a third one which has left my mind just now. I reference it in my book, actually. And it kind of has that strata too, where it applies to different parts, different components of the soul, so to speak. And I think we need to steer all of these elements appropriately in order to conduct ourselves as good saints, right? Unfortunately, bad people will take the reins of any institution or organization that we build up, because all it takes is for good people to occupy those roles, okay? Good people occupy those roles, and then those good people have children, okay? And the good people want to do well by their kids. But sometimes kids are little arseholes, right? I'm not saying the next generation are always bad people. That's not what I'm saying. But some of them might be a little wayward, but they'll still occupy those roles. So the good men that earned it give it to these lesser men who did not earn it, right? What is it they say? Strong people make good times. Good times make weak people. And then weak people make hard times. And then hard times make strong people. And strong people make good times. And there it goes. Something like that. And, you know, it's getting that balance right. It's how do you do it? And I think the Americans did it the best. The Americans had a good system, at least when they wrote it down originally. All that hope and all that ambition they had going, it looked and sounded great. But I think now it's been gamified, and there's a certain, corporatism that goes on, and all these lobbying things that are happening. So, America could maybe sharpen it up. Maybe they could discuss how many terms a senator is allowed to sit for and whatnot. That might be conducive to the running of the country. Same with the politicians in the UK as well. They can go a little crazy. In fact, we do it differently. Our politicians can stay in office. Is it like nearly indefinitely? I don't know. There's no time frame that limits, I think, a prime minister. Let's see. His party got elected. I was curious if a prime minister could rule indefinitely if his party. So yeah, a prime minister in the UK could serve for 40 years because there's no term limits. There's no term limits for who rules the United Kingdom. As long as they won the general election every 5 years, they could rule the place for 40 years if they wanted, right? Margaret Thatcher was the prime minister for 11 years. Tony Blair was the prime minister for 10 years. Robert Walpole in 1742, he served for 20 years. From 1721 to 1742. So, yeah, because that gives you a stronger mandate and a stronger amount of time to get stuff done. If you're an American president, it's like, what, you might have 4 years to do stuff. That's not going to happen, right? Right? Because maybe 2 years you can kind of do stuff, but then the latter 2 years of your first term, you've got to think, right, I've got to get everybody's vote again. So I need to shill and compromise myself in order to make sure I get these votes, because I can't enact anything that might be a little hard, especially if I don't have the ability and the charisma to sway people to back me. So you're already thinking ahead in a kind of gamified way. And then once you've secured that second term, then maybe you can start to just get stuff done. Because it doesn't matter, because you won't get the seat again. So I'd say the second term, really, you need a second term as a US president to really affect change. And then also what you would ideally want as a US president in a second term is for your vice president to then become the president, to continue the work, right? And to refine it. So I don't know. JD Vance, will he be the next president of the USA? Yes, I think JD Vance will be the next president. I think JD Vance has got a lot of stuff up his sleeve. Like, I watched him on Theo Von the 2 times he was on, and he's very personable. And I think he's kind of like, he was a big critic of Donald Trump, so he knows how to play. He knows how to play that side of things, and he's very personable. And I think he's very smart. He didn't do well with women, I don't think, originally, but I think he'll get there. I think if he just continues to show himself as a thoughtful participant, he could get there. I don't know, though. I don't know. But how does that help full preterism? Well, JD Vance isn't a full preterist yet. I think he's a Catholic, but we can get him. We can get him. We're going to get him. Like, that's the whole thing. We're going to get him. So before we get JD Vance, one of the people we're going to get soon is William Bell. Now, William Bell's been talking about full preterism since 1988. Well, before 1988, right? So longer than I've been born. He's been doing this for 40 years, you know? And I'm really curious to hear William Bell's story. I don't know if he'll come on the channel after this video, but I think he might. I think he will. He seems cool. He seems like a nice, chill guy. I probably wouldn't raise the kind of issues of this video. I would let him, like, if I was said to him, what was it like in the early 80s being a full preterist? He might then talk about his experience, right? And he might frame it in that way. Or he might not. He might completely avoid the subject, because how relevant is it to full preterism, right? I don't know. But I would love to just speak to the man, you know what I mean? Because to me, William Bell, although Don Preston was the guy for me, right? Because I really didn't know much about William Bell, or it was just Don Preston that I saw in my studies originally. But William Bell is one of the OGs, you know what I mean? He's one of the originals as far as I can see looking back. So, man, that'd be special, you know? I think that'd be really cool. So let's see if he'll jump on the channel. I reached out to Daniel as well. Daniel hasn't got back to me either. So a lot of people avoiding me. A lot of people are, why are they doing that? Why are people avoiding this channel? Look, you got to talk about controversial stuff sometimes. You know what I'm saying? You have to do it. Just going to double check that I haven't got an email from Daniel. Come on, Daniel. I thought Daniel was a sure thing. I thought Daniel would be running head over heels to jump on this channel. And I would love to speak to Daniel as well, because I don't know what his background is. I don't know where he comes from. I don't know how he sustains himself. He seems to have a life. I don't know how you do that, because it seems like he's some kind of pastor with these, you know, controversial beliefs, and they just don't seem to care, which happens. I mean, lots of churches in this country don't even know what full preterism is. They probably wouldn't even understand you if you explained it to them. They're just saying, oh, okay, that's nice. Don't care. I just want to sing a couple of hymns, which is fair enough. Some people, that's their thing, you know, don't want to take it away from them. So, gosh, we've dealt with a bunch of weighty issues here, guys. Let's see what the chat's saying. Chat, you need to carry this now. Carry me home. Take me home. Get me off the air without me getting too cancelled. Muchos pesos a ti, Willie, pero sin ninguna. Lol. Let's see. Let me see if I can think of something to say. Tú también, hermosa. Tú también, hermosa. Or is it guapo? Yeah, sí, guapo, muy guapo. There we go. All I know how to do is to flirt with you in Mexican. That's what we got going on here, right? That's what we're gonna do. Yeah, there we go. Hormones, you got them for life, and you can't turn them off. Well, I can truly only speak of my own kids. They're assholes. Live, but yeah, truth is truth. That's so funny, man. But yeah, you know, sometimes human beings, hey, sometimes we're little menaces, right? Oh, Metal Gear Solid was so. I just love Snake Plissken as a character. Like Escape from New York. I like the movies. The games don't really capture the movies at all. The games are crazy, man. Like those games, they're just so wacky. They throw things at the player that are just like, is it glitching or is this part of it? Yeah, Metal Gear Solid, Snake Plissken, Kurt Russell, all winners for me. Dang, are you in your 30s? 48, yo. I wouldn't have said that. I would have said 28 for Grady. That's crazy. Yeah, I just recently got back into gaming after years of not playing, more than 15 years, honestly. Yeah, I've got the PC set up now, so I jumped into GTA 5, and then I jumped into the back rooms, Escape the Back Rooms. I just thought I'd do that because I think that's what people are playing these days. Sorry, Grady, I meant Willie. Just no talking here. Un poco bonito, you know? Bonito. I came back to Xbox and there's like 10 Halo games. I quit around Halo 3. Yeah, man, you don't want to, you don't have the energy to make it through that much story, you know what I mean? That's it. Willie Games. That's my gaming channel. If anyone wants to subscribe, it's called Willie Games. Only joking. Like, I don't know if Americans understand that Willie refers to something. You must understand. That must be a thing in America too. I don't know why I went with it, because I could have said Wally. It could have been Wally T, but I went with Willie. But, you know, Willie Nelson. Everybody knows a Willie. Everybody knows a Willie. What am I doing? What has happened? I said you could trust me to navigate these waters. You can no longer trust me. The trust has stopped at this point in the video. Thank you for watching. Anything that progresses from here now is going to be absolutely insane. So if you respected me for how I handled things earlier, let's just end it here. Everyone else, let's get a little crazy. Let's get a little crazy. Nah, I don't know. Okay, nothing else. I got nothing else. I'll just see what the chat's saying. I quit Spyro. Oh yeah, man, Spyro was a classic. Oh, Max Payne, man. They made a movie out of Max Payne with Wahlberg and Mark Wahlberg. That movie was crazy, man. It didn't really capture it. It was a bit weird. I'm looking forward to the new 28 Years Later. And there's a movie coming out with Josh Brolin. There's a Josh Brolin movie coming out soon. I'm kind of keen on seeing that. And yeah, that's what I'm all about. That's what I'm talking about recently. Yeah, it was a really dark movie. My favorite game is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. It has to be. You know, if you ask me what my favorite, I've never emotionally invested and resonated and felt so charmed by a game than the N64 Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. That's the one obvious answer that comes to mind for me. Nothing can touch that just because of where I was in my life. You know, I was a young guy. I was just put into this fantasy world, and it was just so cool. Yeah, really awesome. And GoldenEye, because I was an N64 person kind of first. I played Sega Mega Drive. I like Splatterhouse 2. And then there was this game, Alien Wars. Is it called Alien Wars? Or Alien? I don't know. You were like a falcon or something. Sega game, Alien Wars, Falcon. Is that a thing? Alien Soldier. It was called Alien Soldier. Alien Soldier. I remember that it would say that. Alien Soldier. You're a falcon alien thing. Because you're not really a falcon, but you got like a beak on you and stuff. So I just thought it was like a bird person. Alien Soldier for the Sega Mega Drive or the Sega Genesis by Treasure. It's a side-scrolling run and gun action game known for its intense boss fights. Yeah, I like that. Is it Lilac Wars as well? I played that in N64. Turok. I like Turok a little bit. Not that much. It was alright. Doom. Yeah, Duke Nukem. Yeah. A little bit of Pitfall Jack. Why not? What other big games resonated with me? I'd play some of the Evil Dead games. Like, I liked A Fistful of Boomstick. That was pretty fun. I got a fright there when I looked at that that screen. That was crazy. Oh yeah, the wrestling games were pretty fun too. Oh yeah, the Atari. Well, I watched the Angry Video Game Nerd. He's pretty, man, he's so nostalgic. He takes you back. That's part of his song, is it? He takes you back to the past to play the games that kick ass. Oh, we're waiting for GTA 6 big time. That'll be the next one. Sorry, we're talking about slavery and freedom, and now we're talking a little bit about video games just to wrap it up. Yeah, no, I was looking for a big Christian game. Like I played Dante's Inferno for the Xbox. No, I think it was the Xbox. Dante's Inferno was such a cool game, man. Very, very cool, kind of horror-esque. You play a Knight Templar that gets sent to hell, then he has to try and save Beatrice, no! He has to try and save Beatrice, and he goes through all the different layers of hell, and you can save souls or damn souls to gain different powers. I would always save the souls because, you know, I wanted to be righteous. Fun little game. Well, look, guys, I think I might wrap it up here. Gonna wrap it up. It's been good chewing the fat, as we say in Scotland, you know, a wee chin wiggle, right? You're chewing the fat. That's what we're doing. So I'm quite happy to call it at this point. You know what I mean? Thank you for joining me. Grady, always a pleasure. Jackie, always a pleasure. Joe, always a pleasure. And anybody else that's watching along with us live just now, thank you. I'll try and get some of these people on. Like I'll try and get William Bell on. I'll try and get Daniel Rogers on. If I got to send them a second email, so be it. So be it. Because I would love to get their insights, you know, and see what they have to contribute. And again, to anybody listening too, whenever you want to jump on and have a chat sometime, let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. All right. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful evening. And I'll catch you on the next one. This is going 4:23 in Scotland. And I'm going to sign on out. God bless. See you later. And enjoy your freedom. And let's spread that freedom as far and as wide as we possibly can here on Earth. And I really think we'll get things done that way. You know, we'll advance the kingdom. We'll advance for full preterist freedom. And good things will happen. Amen.